Thanks for reaching out to us. We're excited for you wanting to do this and to have this opportunity. I guess just kind of starting off, ours are perfect as far as being able to know when to be on and off. It's very much like you said, a switch to where, and again, it all goes back to exercise though, and making sure that we're giving them the time they need to where they can wear themselves out. But once they do that, a dogo that is content, I mean, you can have a nice, quiet, peaceful yard. You can turn a dog loose and let them run around and be with you. And the other dogs are not going to go crazy because, they know that they'll get their time too. It's very content. They very much have an off switch. We keep our dogs outside, but I could very easily bring any one of them inside, and within a couple of days, they're pretty much acclimated to it and comfortable. They have a very big understanding of when they need to be on and when they're looking for something. And by keeping them their intelligence is, and that was another reason too why we kind of stuck with the Dogo and made multiple crosses after our first litter, is just seeing how smart they are, and just their computer works so great. They're such a programmable dog. I think that people try to debate a lot as far as Dogos. I think the other two dogs that are kind of seen as that lead-in type catch dog is, of course, the Pit Bull and then the American Bulldog too, and people try to talk about the pros and cons. And I think that there are some Dogos out there that you could say, can compare with them as far as holding style and the ability to stop a big hog. I think in some ways the Dogo has some pluses going for them as far as being a little bit leggier than the Pit Bull. And I think as far as the American Bulldog, I've seen Pit Bull or Dogos that have a little bit better personality and have a much better off switch. But for us, the thing with the Dogo that we kind of like, that kind of sets them apart for our use, is they're just a little bit more programmable. They're a little bit smarter, a little bit more toned down. A Pit Bull, you really got to get them young and then just try to get as much into them to kind of break that stubbornness as you can. And some of them, it's almost impossible to kind of get them to think exactly how you need them to be able to hunt the way we do. There's no other dogs that these dogs are relying on. They have to do it themselves. So they have to be able to focus on what they're doing and look past things like cows and horses, livestock, anything that might be a distraction. And with a lot of these bulldog breeds, it's really difficult to do. But one thing that kind of draws it to the Dogo is that you can kind of program them to think a certain way. And once they get that in their mind, they really do have a nice IQ for going out and trying to find hogs and doing what you need them to do. They're really good problem solvers. Our first litter, which was Banshee, a Flying G, we bred her back to another Lakocha male that kind of came from Ricky Schaunefeld's yard. He's in Central Texas, and he's a really nice hard male. He was just about to turn 2 years old. Banshee was I think a little over 2 years old, maybe almost 3, and we started that litter at about 8 months old, and that was right when we had our last cur dog, and then another kind of rescue that we had. And once they got going, we kind of started hunting those dogs by themselves. We kept 3 brothers out of that litter, and when they were about 10 months old, going on a year, we started hunting them by themselves. It was kind of like our first dip into an all Dogo pack, and it was just. I've kept dogs from other litters and started them together, cur, hound, cross, whatever. All different kinds, all different styles. I'd never had dogs that were so kind of easy to turn on, which I was worried about. I thought that was going to be our biggest hurdle, was to have dogs that took to this naturally, because nobody's really been breeding Dogos to do this. Like I said, for the most part, they've been using a catch dog role. So there was nobody out there that was specifically seeing if a Dogo could be an all-around hunting, find its own hog, hold it, and not have to rely on others. And, these boys, from a year on to about 18 months, the amount of growth they showed in that time frame was comparable, if not better, than any other young dogs I've hunted with. And to have to do that by themselves, they really didn't have any kind of puppy trainer that was showing them the ropes. Most young dogs I started, you needed a couple veterans, and you needed some good standout hunts, some repetitive, one pig after another, older dogs showing them things that they wouldn't normally be able to do on their own without seeing another dog do it. But with these Dogos, with Buzzsaw and Bronco and Bull, our first litter, those 3 boys, I mean, they really showed us that there is some good hunting instinct there, and once you get them started the right way, they can really make themselves useful. I mean, we made it a point to us, though. I mean, we tried to go hunting at the most optimum time. We tried to go to places where we knew we could get them on sign. We would work them, several times a week. We gave them the opportunity. I mean, we had to put some legwork into it. But in doing so, once we set them up for success, they were able to finish it off themselves and do what they needed to produce a hog.
Can you talk about the history of the Dogo as you guys see it?
Just giving you a little bit of a background. I was kind of born into hunting dogs. From the time I guess I was around 3, my dad would take me coon hunting. He, in the early 90s, had a couple tree and walker coon hounds. So kind of growing up with that and coon hunting, I was very much involved in that. Spent a lot of time studying pedigrees and kind of, following the world of competition coon hounds and kind of being introduced into that aspect of working dogs. And I guess about the time I was coming into 11 or 12, there was a little bit of a kind of feral hog explosion in population in this area. And there had been people around here that had hunted hogs for years before this already, one of which was James Land, who he was kind of known at the time as pretty much the best out there. And I actually had him as a teacher growing up in school and went with him a couple times when I was about 12. And after that kind of ruined anything else for me as far as working dogs. Mm-hmm. Hog dogs was all I wanted to kind of be around and what I wanted to do. So got with a good group of friends, and that's what we focused on for the following years. And by the time we graduated high school around 2007, we had some really nice kind of working hog dogs. They were a little bit of a mixture. For the most part, they were mostly made up of cur dog with a little bit of running walker in them, kind of what people use to hunt coyotes here, kind of like a foxhound type, and then a little bit of bulldog to kind of help with the catching bred into them. Mm-hmm. And we really didn't use any catch dogs. We didn't have any lead-in catch dogs or any pit bulls or anything like that. That was kind of just what we hunted. They were all that makeup of dog, and there was quite a few people here in the area that use that type of dog, and it was kind of a proven cross. So that's what we did, and then I went on to college and kind of had to leave that pack of dogs behind, and I didn't hunt near as much. My buddies, they stuck with it, and they ended up making just some really nice working hog dogs and a couple generations of it. And graduated college 4 years later. Didn't really know what I wanted to do as far as like a career. I just knew that I wanted to have some hunting dogs. So I started working on getting a pack put together using some of the dogs that my buddies had kept and were hunting. And I also had been hunted a couple times with a gentleman in our area named James Kett, and he had a male stud Dogo and bred it to a cur dog on his yard, and I bought a pup out of that. It was a half Dogo, and that was going to kind of be the catch type dog that I had in my pack. I was going to use him kind of as a running catch dog. Well, about a year after graduating college, I moved into my own place, and I moved in with Ashley, and her kind of a little bit of background for her and working dogs is her and her family moved down here when she was in high school. And Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, I don't know if you've heard a whole lot about them, but it's kind of like the premier breeding site for military working dogs.
Yeah, yep.
And they have a program where they foster out dogs for people, that are going to be military-type dogs, and people will raise them, put a handle on them. It's a very strict set of guidelines that they have to follow. And Ashley and her family were very much involved in that. Her parents still are today. They do a lot of volunteer work over at Lackland, kind of helping with the military program. And she raised a couple Malinois while in high school that went on to do some great things for the military, and then they also adopted a few that kind of flunked out of the system. But, she was very knowledgeable as far as the handle of a dog, and kind of that's where I learned a lot of that was through Ashley. But anyway, when we moved in together, I had to sell off most of my pack just because it was our first place together and because of the size of the place. And the one dog that I ended up keeping was that half Dogo. And for about a year or so, I kind of stayed away. I hunted when I could, which wasn't much, and it was probably the most out of it I had been since I was 12, for the last 10 years that I'd been hunting. And, later on when we got engaged and moved out to a bigger place and had our first kind of real setup to where we were able to do so, Ashley talked about how she kind of wanted to get into dogs and working dogs specifically, and we kind of talked about what we'd be interested in. And our half Dogo that we kept, Blitzen was his name, and we were starting to hunt him. He was probably about 18 months old, and we were kind of getting the itch to where we just kind of take him in the woods with the one or two leftover dogs that I had from my pack. And, it really wasn't about a whole lot of success, but it was just kind of fun watching the dogs work and then having something to do. So, when we talked about trying to really get back into it seriously and getting into working dogs, and I asked Ashley what she thought, as far as what direction we could go. And she had been studying a lot about, purebred Dogos and the Dogos that were out there. And that's kind of what we ended up going with. And I asked her, I said, if we were going to do this, we should probably maybe try to, do our research and get a Dogo that can do it all. Because, from what I'd seen from years hunting and what I'd heard about people that had the right Dogos, there were some out there that were capable of finding their own hog, catching it, and holding it. And I thought that'd be kind of a cool project, something different to work on. And in theory, it made a lot of sense for us and for how we were going to probably end up hunting. So in 2014, right in December, we went and visited the Stacy's in Flying G Kennel in Oklahoma, I think Blanchard, Oklahoma. And it was their second litter of Dogo pups from a male named Walicho of Cazador Creo, which they're a real famous kennel in Europe. I don't know the exact country, but they're kind of known for having a muscular, athletic-type-looking Dogo. And they had bred him to what is a Lacocha female from Texano Bravo based out of Texas. They were real good friends with the owner of that kennel. And Lacocha is another really popular, probably the most popular as far as, working line out there. You can find a lot of dogs that have Lacocha in their background. But so this pup was basically a half Lacocha, kind of half Cazador Creo type pup. She was a female named Banshee, and being around working dogs all my life and owning all types of pups, crossed all different ways and several different breeds, and Ashley too with her background in dogs. We just both fell in love with this pup. She was just everything we kind of want as far as her temperament, and then and her appearance, she was just kind of a freak. Just a super long-legged, athletic-type dog. There wasn't even a whole lot of Dogos out there that looked like Banshee did at the time, which, that was only 5 years ago. But even then, you can find a lot more of her type now than I think you could back then. She was just an excellent built pup, and we just fell in love with the breed and kind of been rolling with it since that. But that's kind of a little bit of background on us and how we kind of got where we are now.
And talk about your beginning experiences with the Dogo when you're out on the hog hunts. How has it been a different experience than the other dogs that you've been around?
Well, I've hunted with Dogos a few different times, while we were still doing the cur dog thing and when I was younger. And there's a lot of hog hunters in this part of the world. South Texas, it's not uncommon to drive down the road and see a dog box, and it's somebody that has hog dogs, and everybody's got every kind of different style you can think of. I would say the vast majority have kind of crossed up dogs like I was referring to earlier, and they may have a lead-in pit bull or something. And there's a few people out there that have a lead-in Dogo that they use, and there's some people even more hard to find, but there are people out there that will run a Dogo on the ground as kind of like a running catch dog type thing. So, I knew the Dogo as a hunting breed before. I'd been a little bit experienced with them. But I think what we were trying to do, though, when we sought out with this, was we wanted to kind of have a little bit of a specific reason why we were going to use an all-Dogo pack. And by hunting with these other styles of dogs and seeing them and working with them, you learn a lot. And one thing that I learned is I don't want to chase hogs. Especially nowadays, from even the 15 years ago from when I started, there was a lot more pasture, a lot bigger acres that you had to run. And, if there was a race, it wasn't that big of an issue. But the longer I did this and the more I saw shorter range dogs that are quicker to grab a hog instead of try to chase or bay or in that aspect, I think that this was just a better way to go. So we wanted to get dogs that were kind of able to work smaller pastures of land, could work together in a pack, everybody be on the same page. And I guess that's a lot of it, too, is it's even so much of being an all Dogo pack, I mean, it's an all purebred pack for one. I mean, I've seen a lot of people that hunted with all plots or all mountain curs, and it just seemed like the more related the dogs were, or the more of the same type they were, the more uniform the pack was, and everybody seemed to be more on the same page. There wasn't more of confusion whenever something kicked off. Everybody seemed to be working a little bit more as a team. So, first off, just having them be all the same breed, it kind of seems like everybody's able to kind of understand what's going on most of the time a little bit better than if we kind of had a jumbled up mix of dogs out there. I think, too, that it's important that I don't want a dog that's going to pop up a hog and not think of anything other than trying to engage it immediately. Now, with that being said, the way we hunt, pretty much 90% of the time is on foot. We really don't use ATVs or trucks or anything like that. So it's a big part on us to where we have to try to make the most effort to be there as soon as possible. We want the dog and hog to have contact for as little amount of time as we can.
Right.
And, I mean, several reasons for that. Of course, the dog safety first, and then 2, it's the humane thing, and then 3, I mean, the longer a dog is caught, the better chance of you losing that hog. So, I mean, you want to try to get there as soon as possible. But it's a shorter range style of hunting than what I did kind of back in high school. But I wouldn't say that our success rate has suffered so much from it, because when you find a hog, there's that contact made right off the bat. You're not waiting on the hog or allowing the hog to make the next move, which, as I stated earlier, with as many people as we have hunting around here, and as long as people have been hunting around here, I mean, these hogs are very educated as far as to what a dog is. And the chances of a hog standing still for you, whether it be from a bay dog or even a dog that's not committed to catching, maybe they're kind of going in and out on that hog, or it'll bite and then kind of let go and back up and bark and then come back and nip at it again. I mean, the hogs around here, they've seen that way too many times, and they're just going to run. And it's funny, until you've like hunted long enough and you kind of understand it, I mean, you get to realizing that a mature hog, which, I mean, doesn't have to be a big hog, but just a mature hog that's done growing, I mean, they can cover so many miles in a matter of minutes. And, I mean, it really just kind of wears on a dog that's going to chase hogs all through the country. And I've seen dogs. I've got a lot of praise for cur dogs, from certain lines that have great noses and can find hogs. But I would get so irritated when I'd see a dog that was, 70, 75 pounds, and they find a 35, 40-pound hog, and they let that hog take them on a race for miles, and you burn up so much time in country. You're usually pretty limited on how far you can go in a direction once you turn out somewhere. So to have a dog that's going to chase a hog or allow a hog to move on him, even though he's physically capable of having the size to dominate that hog, I mean, to me, that's just frustrating. So this was kind of what we went for, and it's really, in the last couple of years, is proven itself to us. I tell people all the time that this is not for everybody. It takes a certain kind of patience, for sure, to hunt the way we hunt. Like I said, it's a lot of walking. It's, a few dry runs. You're not going to find hogs every time you go. But the thing that has kind of kept our faith, and the reason why I think we'll be sticking with this for the long run, is I've hunted with so many different people in so many different programs, and the amount of times I've seen a hog get started and that race not finished with a hog on the other end of it, I just think that our percentage of doing it the way we do is so much higher, and I appreciate that so much more than having to chase one hog throughout the night and end up going home empty-handed.
Can you talk about the differences between living with a Dogo and, say, a more traditional Texas hog dog?
I think that in some aspects, in a lot of aspects, there's a lot of positives on the traditional Texas, kind of South Texas working dog style. But there's also some big aspects in an all Dogo yard. I've seen some dogs, and for the most part, if no matter what the breed or genetic makeup of a dog, if you're working him and you're keeping them tired, your yard's going to be quiet. You're not going to have to worry about some of the nonsense that goes on if you're putting the right amount of fatigue on your dogs, if you're giving them the exercise they need. But I've seen a lot of cases where, I mean, there are some cur dogs that the amount of bottom and energy that they have, I mean, it's hard not to have a noisy yard or have a yard where these dogs are constantly restless. I think, too, even if somebody had a South Texas line of dogs that was very unique, everybody on the same page. I mean, you could have a good vibe for the most part from dog to dog on your yard, but typically that's not the case. Typically they'll have one or two dogs of one style, one or two dogs of another style, and because of that, there's kind of a little bit of a difference in personas, and you get a little bit of kind of clashes in style, and then just kind of noise, and just a little bit of the nonsense that you get with a mixed yard. Another thing too is a lot of these people that hunt that way, you know, it takes a good bit of dogs to be able to stop a good size hog. A lot of times they're hunting with more dogs than we are. I mean, where we can take 2 or 3 dogs and have a successful hunt, most of the people around us are hunting with, you know, 5 to up to 8 or 9 or 10. And that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with that style, and there's a lot of hunters that are very successful in that way. But, I mean, only having to worry about 4 or 5 dogs on your yard, and as far as the noise and the time it takes to really give them the care they need and to get them out and exercise them, rather than having, you know, up to a dozen different dogs on your yard and different personalities and breeds, and kind of having to try to keep the peace between that. It's much nicer to have everybody kind of on the same wavelength, in my opinion. I think it was kind of in the early 1940s, right before the middle of the 1900s. In Argentina, there was a doctor, and he was kind of well known throughout the country. He was also very, very intelligent as far as working dogs and dogs in general. He was a big lover of dogs, and there was a dog in the area that was known as the fighting dog of Cordoba. People talk a lot about how the Dogo Argentino is made up of all these different breeds, and they are, and there's things like the Pointer and the Boxer and the Great Dane and several others in there, and there's different interpretations as far as to what those dogs really were. But the one thing that is pretty much universally agreed on is that the staple of the Dogo was the fighting dog of Cordoba, which I guess to kind of picture that, they say it's in a lot of different literature that it was basically like a Spanish Mastiff, which could be, you know, any kind of Mastiff that from that part of the world. And they would crossbreed that to Bull Terriers and other kinds of fighting dogs that they had on that part of Argentina. And this was back, of course, when dog fighting was more popular down there, more common. And then that's how they kind of created this fighting dog of Cordoba. And what these guys did was this doctor, he got several of the females of these fighting dogs of Cordoba and was crossbreeding them to things like the Pointer and the Bulldog and, you know, Spanish Mastiff and things like that. And then they'd crossbreed those offspring kind of back to other F1s of that program. And, I mean, it was really kind of, when you read about it, when you read that there's 10 different breeds, it's kind of hard to take serious, you know, the genetic makeup. But when you go through and read what he actually wrote and read some of the articles that explain what they did, there was really a lot of thought put into this. And the dogs that were chosen for very specific reasons, and not just the breed, but the specimens of the breed themselves that they used were very specifically chosen for certain aspects and certain qualities. And a lot of them were very proven dogs. So then you kind of started to see a certain type. They started getting the unique look that they wanted to. A big thing as far as the breed that even from the very early beginning that they focused on was the head. You know, of course, the Dogo is all white. That's something that they wanted for, you know, and a lot of people, a lot of hunters kind of have issue with the white coat, and even owners that just have the dog as a regular non-working dog kind of take issue with the coat because it is white and it makes them more susceptible to skin issues. But, I mean, by doing that, they kind of set a type of standard to where, you know it's a dog. Not all white dogs are Dogos, but all Dogos are white, you know, and it makes it to where you're never going to see a red or a black or a brindle. It's like it has to be white if it's a Dogo. Now, they do allow, you know, kind of pirates or black patches on the dog. That's still within the breed standard. But, you know, it's very much frowned upon. You know, an all-white Dogo will win a class against a Dogo that has a patch on him if everything else is tied. But anyway, they focused on the coat color, which, again, I think kind of makes it a little bit more easier to keep with that genetic material. And then I think, too, a big focus was on the head. There was so much written about the head. I mean, one of the original standards, the amount that they write specifically about the skull and the length of the skull and how it should be shaped when compared to everything else they write about the standard. I mean, it's almost like 25% of what that dog standard is based upon is their skull. So And I mean, there's way too many people in Argentina that have done so much with the breed that I can list, and they really kind of created it and shaped it into what it is. And then I guess as far as on the hunting side of it, so like I said, I got into hunting right around the early 2000s, and there was very few people in South Texas that were kind of using them for hunting, for catch dogs on wild hogs, because as I said, this is kind of right when hog hunting with dogs was really starting to take off as a popular deal down here. And there was also other pockets of Dogo owners that I'd kind of heard of. I knew in Florida there were some people that were breeding Dogo Argentinos, and I'm sure there were others throughout the country. But at that time, really kind of South Texas, Florida, and then a breeder kind of up in the New York area were kind of the main ones that were known for where you could get Dogos. And they were a little bit, it seems like, bigger than what the average is now, or at least the dogs I saw then. I mean, I remember going hunting with these big 120-pound males with big cinder block heads. I mean, just kind of more of the Mastiff-style Dogo. And then, in the mid-2000s, people started importing straight from Argentina themselves. Other people started buying from breeders in Europe, which Europe at that time was starting to have more breeders that were raising Dogos. The breed in general was becoming more popular. And now, I mean, it seems like there's a lot more representation as far as the different types of bloodlines out there and all the different types of Dogos you can find. I mean, it wasn't near as diverse 20 years ago, but now it seems like there's kind of a big representation, both in the hunting world and just in dog ownership period, of what the Dogo Argentino, is out there.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys run into any health issues with the Dogos?
When we first got into Dogos, we knew about the deafness through them being all white, and that was kind of something that you'd read a lot from. At the same time, if there was something that we thought these dogs were lacking in their diet, we would definitely be making changes. Yeah. But I think people have seen our dogs. People have asked Ashley many times on Instagram, what we feed, thinking that it's going to be something crazy. But right now we're feeding Diamond High Energy, and they're doing great on it. They really are. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're a dog, and they need to be treated like a dog. Like I said, their veterinarian care and making sure that they have all their needs met is super important. But at the end of the day, they're still a working dog, and that's how we keep our yard. I mean, at the same time, it's we don't ever want to ask too much of them to where it's just a negative experience. Right. We want to keep them as healthy as possible, and I think we do that. If we see signs that there's a dog having an issue with something, whether it be skin or anything like that, we're quick to kind of take care of it. But yeah, otherwise we really do try to keep this and preserve these working Dogos. That's a big thing for us. It's not that people sometimes kind of accuse us of trying to make the Dogo something that it's not, or asking too much of our Dogos because that's what they're not designed to do. But really, these dogs do have a lot of working dog background into them. Some of those breeds that I mentioned, I mean, those were at one time working breeds, and the dogs that were used from those breeds were some of the most, hardworking dogs in that breed. So, it's in these Dogos to do the job we ask them. We're just preserving it. We're not mm-hmm. trying to, make them do something extra. It's just keeping what's already there and utilizing it as best we can.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talk about the skin. How does their skin do in the hot and humid weather?
It seems like all of our young dogs go through a stage, and I guess most young dogs do, and because their skins aren't so white, or their coats aren't white and so short-haired, you may not notice it. But, I mean, they do kind of go through a puberty stage where you'll have, maybe a few hot spots, especially in the summertime. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, once they get out of that, I mean, our grown dogs, the amount of hot spots we see on them or the issues that we have with them, I would say it's no more. If anything, it's less than you would see on any other kind of working dog. Like, I've had some Catahoulas that had horrible skin issues, mm-hmm. Not even related, just different ones within the breed that just had bad skin issues. I've had mutts that have had real bad hot spots and things like that. Mange was an issue. And with these Dogos, I mean, if you're feeding them right and you're giving them a good, clean place, then you really don't have the hot spots or skin issues that you would see in other breeds. Right. I'm not saying they're maybe better for it than other dogs, but we sure don't see the amount of issues. Again, though, a big part of that is shade. Shade's very important down here. Having an open-aired area where they have plenty of shade and good access to clean water, it seems like their coats do really well.
Mm-hmm. So Ashley, can you talk about your experiences with the Malinois and how is that compared to the Dogo, or is there any similarities, or is it just completely different?
I think there are similarities. I do believe that the drive is different. Malinois have that, ball drive, drive for reward, through a toy, things like that. They definitely do not have much of an off switch, so that's also one thing that we do adore about the Dogo, with that intelligence, I think, and, if they have an outlet, that they enjoy their rest,
Mm-hmm.
they enjoy family time. Malinois are go, go, go all the time, have this energy, very, very high energy, not much of an off switch, which I can appreciate that. And I loved working with the Malinois, but to kind of get my own working dog pack going, and Andrew having his background in the hog hunting, we just really went towards the Dogo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dogos were created to protect, the family and the property, and they enjoy being a part of the family. But something that I would suggest, if someone getting a Dogo pup, is just to socialize at a young age, because they do, create bonds with their family that are super strong and are wary of strangers.
Mm-hmm.
So they see a big difference between strangers and someone that's a part of the family. But if you socialize your Dogo, train your Dogo at an early age, they can tell the difference between if someone is welcome or not. But yeah, they definitely are territorial of their home place. So when we take our dogs hunting, they need to be able to have a landowner drive up on them, things like that. So they need to have a stable temperament to humans, but they are much more territorial of their home place. They're, if a stranger comes onto your home place, they're going to protect you. And you don't really have to train that much to bring that out of a Dogo.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to socialize them, and that will come with maturity and age.
Right.
Conditioning is a huge thing for us, because we are running an all-Dogo pack on the ground where they're going to be doing all the work themselves. They have no, other dog to rely on to put in all the legwork to find these hogs. So conditioning is pretty big for us. So summertime's coming up, it's going to get hot, so we like to take them on little day trips, to get that heart pumping and work them and run them. But you also, with conditioning and running these dogs, you got to give them rest. So, we'll go hunting a couple times a week, but you also want to give them time to where they're just lounging around, resting, recovery, and that's how you get an athlete, A dog that's going to run and have the stamina. You have to build that up.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some dogs that you guys like that you've never been around or had the first-hand experiences but are intrigued by?
I mean, we've always kind of joked that if this Dogo thing wasn't going to work out, that we'd kind of get into the world of big game hounds, like Northwest American high-caliber big game hounds, which, are kind of not compared to anything else in the world as far as the hunting and the ability to go miles. But of course, down here, that's kind of impractical. That's not something we'd probably be able to do with the size of the places. But it's something that we can certainly appreciate. And then, kind of yesterday, just checking things out, we listened to your episode 26 about the bully Arab, and kind of saw the pictures, which, we'd known about bully Arab before, but just kind of seeing them and hearing that interview, that was just really cool, and seeing the pictures of them and seeing the videos of them working. Bully Arab that's kind of like a goal of ours, is to have a Dogo that can kind of compare a little bit to that.
Yeah.
Of course, the tracking's a little bit different. I think from what Shane said, and from what some of the other things we've read about them, is they're a little bit more longer range, a little bit colder nose than a typical Dogo.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of something that we strive to be like, I guess. That's a very cool breed that we can respect. But as far as that, if we were really going to do this, and there's a reason why they're tried and true, but the kind of South Texas cur dog mix, that's kind of what people use around here and have a lot of success with. So I guess if we were going to keep hunting hogs, that would be something that we'd maybe look into getting back into.
Cur dogs are interesting because, I'm a cityfied city boy. I grew up in a medium-sized city, and I didn't grow up hunting or anything like that. I was playing ball, and getting into trouble, so the outdoor life wasn't necessarily in my purview. But the older I've gotten, the more I've become interested in that lifestyle. I actually lived in Central Texas for a while. My mom spent her last 20 years of her life down there, so that's kind of where I started looking at more of a working dog, because I was in a town of 900 people in the middle of nowhere, and so I got to see a lot of different dogs and different purposes, and so that's what kind of spurred my interest to start this podcast. Was more of a learning experience for myself, and to share that learning experience. So with the cur dogs, what are some good crosses that you've seen with the cur dogs that would have an off switch?
Well, I mean, there's so many, and I mean, just every kind of combination and percentage of those that you could think of. I mean, I've seen so many different breeds and crosses of those types of dogs be used on hogs. But like I said, for the formula that I've seen work multiple times and just kind of hold true has just been, we'd say maybe like half that genetic makeup comes from like a cur type or a stock type, ranch type dog, something short haired, usually yellow or, some type of yellow, tan, somewhere in there. And you take that and you cross that, you have maybe a quarter or so to 3/8 of what would be considered a running walker or a July hound or, some kind of fast type hound, not so much a coon hound like a Treant walker or a black and tan, but something that's a little bit more designed for fast game like coyote. Mm-hmm. Running walker and July hound are probably the most common that's used. There are some people that cross plots and have success with that. I've seen it go both ways. If the plot comes, it seems like the grittier that line of plot is, the better it crossbreeds. It seems the looser bang that type of plot is, the more chance that you're going to get an open mouth dog that's gonna bark on track a little bit more, not put teeth into a hog to stop it. And again, just a little bit of bulldog. You don't want a whole lot, mm-hmm. But I found that people that kind of hunt a straight cur or a cur hound cross, and it doesn't have a little bit of bulldog on it, you're usually relying on a catch type dog then that you're going to have to lead in. And like I said, that may work in some spots of Texas, but down here, these hogs, they're just going to run on you. So you got to have something that's willing to put teeth into a hog. And if you're exercising them and you're hunting them enough, you can certainly tire them out and have a quiet yard and have a little bit of an off switch. And a lot of them, their temperaments were great dogs. Mm-hmm. You could have them ride around in the truck with you. They could be around your family, your kids, and they're never going to show any sign of aggression or dog aggression. I've seen as many of them as 12. On the ground hunting together. You kill a hog, and there's still 12 dogs right there, and nobody's got an issue with each other. It's not uncommon. I think a lot of that too goes back to that stock dog, but also that running walker or that running type hound you put in there, because that's how coyotes are run, or in big packs of dogs. So I think you kind of breed a little bit of a social skill into your dogs when you cross into that. But like I say too, with that same deal, the programs that I've hunted with and the people that I've seen, who were able to improve their yard and make the dogs better than what they started out with, were ones that did so using a purebred dog, whether it be a plot hound or, mountain cur or kimmer cur or blackmouth catahoula, whatever. And it doesn't have to be registered. But if they stuck with one breed and they tried to better what they had within the guidelines of that breed, and that's what they limited to breeding to, it seemed like they were able to kind of stay to where they could improve what they had, whereas those that were crossbreeding usually end up breeding into a corner because you can't ever really find true north again. And that's why I kind of always wanted to go that direction eventually, to where we ended up with a pure breed of dog. I really do appreciate what this, and we can just keep calling it that South Texas type cur dog. I really appreciate what they have to offer and what kind of dog they are. The reason that I wanted to get out of that was because I knew that eventually what you end up with is not what you started out with or where you wanted to go. Eventually you have to take another direction. Whereas if you stay with one pure breed of dog, you have so many, guidelines that keep you right and kind of keep your compass pointing true north. You can get there a lot faster crossbreeding. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. First off, I do want to say that I don't condone crossbreeding dogos, but I'm not a fan of it, and it's not something that Ashley and I think that we'll ever do anytime soon. And I think the reason for that is it's such a new breed that has such a genetic, like I said, there's 10 breeds supposedly that were used to make it. So there's a really good chance that you're not going to get the kind of consistency you'll see in a litter. I've seen Dogos cross with dogs, and you have pups that are, 30 or 40 pounds when they're full grown. And it's like, how can that be a representation of what a half Dogo is supposed to be? Now, with that being said, there's great examples of cross Dogos out there, and there's a lot of people. What Douglas Mason in Columbus, Texas did with crossing Catahoulas to Dogos, and he kind of made his own type of working dog, called them cat does, and, he would run one or two of them on the ground with a purebred Catahoula, and he said, several times that that's what he thinks is the most ideal hunting pack, for several reasons. I've seen a gentleman, one of the first guys that I kind of started hunting into with was Drew Hurley, had a half Catahoula, half Dogo that was one of the best all-around hog dogs I've ever seen. But at the same time, I think that the Dogo doesn't cross well as far as, when you breed, I don't breed to get one or two good dogs and then a bunch of junk. We want a uniform, consistent litter that's capable, that has a good range of pups that are going to make it, a high percentage of dogs that are going to turn into hunting dogs. But, you can definitely crossbreed dogs and get there a lot faster than hunting a purebred pack. What I've seen down here, because there are so many working type dogs available, and it's kind of similar. If you look at the classified ads on some of these Australian hunting sites, it's very similar to where you can kind of spend just as much money just as fast buying these different crossbreed dogs, trying to put together a puzzle piece for a pack. If you can find you one good crossbred dog that can do it all, that's great. But a lot of guys end up running 6 or 7 different dogs of all these different types of breedings because they can't get them to where there's a uniform set that can do all the work by themselves. They're having to rely on each other. So when they lose a dog, or if a dog gets hurt for a while, they're having to go out and buy another dog anyway. Now, I do think that the Dogo Argentino, the price tag that people put on them, it really does turn away a lot of possible working homes because people don't want to spend that kind of money on a purebred Dogo Argentino that they see as overvalued and risk getting them lost or hurt, or the dog not making it, not being a good hunting dog at all, and being a coal, and then having sunk all this money into it when they can try a crossbred pup that's maybe 5 times cheaper and has a better chance of turning out. Well, I think there's a lot of, especially kind of the people that got into the breed earlier on and had Dogos kind of about the time when I was starting into hunting, just regular hog hunting. Back in the early 2000s, there were people that were already breeding Dogos around here and hunting Dogos around here. And you talk to those people nowadays, and they kind of preach that same doom and gloom that, the working Dogo is dead and the price tag of the Dogo has made it to where, nobody wants to buy it and work it. And that can certainly be the case. But I think, too, though, even though with the price of the Dogo being what it is, there are way more people working their Dogos now. There's way more working Dogos out there now just because it's become more popular of a breed. Mm-hmm. But I think their temperament and their athleticism, there's a lot more people out there hunting Dogos now than there were when I first got into it. I feel much better about being able to go out. We have no plans to go out and get a pup off of our yard anytime soon. We're very lucky to have kind of gotten into the situation that we're in. We're able to kind of maintain and keep making the dogs that we need for our own personal use. We really don't sell a lot of dogs. But if we had to, if something happened, I feel really good about my chances about going off my yard and being able to find a working Dogo now than I did even 5 years ago when we first got into Dogos. In the last 5 years, it seems like there's been more of a push for like preserving the working Dogo. Now, with that being said, I do, I'll just point it out that there's nobody really out there, at least in North America, that's kind of doing what we're doing with these dogs, and that's kind of what we hang our hat on. That's kind of where we're trying to separate our dogs from others, just to kind of show ourselves that they can do it. But there's a lot of people out there that are taking their dogs to the woods, they're following them up behind high-caliber cur dogs, and they're putting them on multiple hogs, and they're hunting them hard. And there's some people that are doing it similar to us, where they are running Dogos on the ground, and their Dogos are finding and catching their own hogs, and they're asking quite a bit of them. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot easier now to get a working Dogo, I think, now than it is 5 years ago, like I said. I can't say the same thing for the American Bulldog. I do believe that it's a similar situation, though, as you said, though, where the price tag probably does deter that. But I feel more positive now about working Dogos than I did 5 years ago.
That makes sense.
And I think too, it should be noted there are people down here that hunt in a way that Ashley and I just we don't have the time to be able to hunt like that. There's people that kill over 200 hogs a year behind a pack of dogs.
Right.
And what they need, and when they see, weaknesses or holes in their program, and they crossbreed or they try to create some kind of F1 project to get something where they're right where they need to be right away, and they're not really looking at the long game. And I totally understand that, and I appreciate that. And I love to see a good hybrid dog that's got the heterosis, do something crazy. And that's any kind of fan of working dog would love to see that.
Yeah.
I just, again, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of crossing Dogos, and we kind of got into this for something that we could have a long-term program based around.
Yep.
And I figured that the Dogo was a good. And two, another thing about the Dogo, which goes back to it having so many different breeds mixed into it.
And then since these dogs are intelligent, and then, that affection and then that sociable aspect of them, you really, truly, you build a bond with every working dog. But it just seems like, these Dogos, you just build this really, really tight bond working with these dogs that have that intelligence. They understand what happened. They learn every time you kill a hog together. They know that, I'm going to get there as soon as I can, so they put it all in. It's just a really deep bond that you build with these dogs.
It's like a family outing.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Enjoy it.
So, again, here's another goofy question that I like to ask because it interests me. I don't care how goofy it sounds, but, I'm a bulldog guy. I grew up with English bulldogs and pit bulls. And then I also grew up around pugs. And now I have a Shih Tzu, which I bought for my wife, but that dog is just as much mine as my wife. So I like little dogs too. I don't discriminate. So if you were to have a little dog, what little dog would each of you guys have?
I mean, I've always kind of liked the small terrier type dogs, like the Jag Terriers and stuff, and I can appreciate that for what it is. I think that and if that wasn't something that I was able to focus on all day long, which I probably wouldn't, it'd probably just be like a yard dog or a truck dog or something, I don't know how that would work out, so I think maybe something a little bit more kind of toned down, like maybe a Jack Russell or,
maybe
something like that.
Schnauzer.
Yeah, a mini Schnauzer, that'd be cool. But
those are kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you're putting like a size specification on it, I guess we would probably find the smallest, real old, American pit bull terrier that we could, and try to pass that off as our lap dog, Which I've seen some 30-pound pit bull terriers that have just been tenacious. We had a good friend of mine when we were starting out. He found some. I mean, they looked like Jack Russell Terriers crossed with Beagles or something. I mean, they never got more than 20 pounds, but they were just the gamiest little things. And you would go and see a big hog, and that hog would be standing or it'd be swimming in a tank, and both those dogs would be one on each ear, just hanging on. But we can appreciate those small dogs for what they are, and how there's some great working dogs out there that are, from the smaller breed. It seems like the ratting community in the last 5 years has really kind of picked up, and that's just a really cool thing to see and appreciate those dogs for, that kind of drive. I mean, that's impressive.
I think we appreciate all types of working dogs and all ways that people use them. And it's possible to own a Dogo when you don't hog hunt. You can give that dog an outlet. I think we see all different kinds of styles that we can appreciate.
There's a lot of breeders out there that get on their pulpits and preach about how a Dogo needs to be a working Dogo. It needs to be a hunting Dogo, or what's the point of having a Dogo? I mean, not all Labradors are retrieving ducks in 20-degree rivers.
You can own a Dogo and respect the Dogo for what it is. Maybe you shouldn't be having a yard full of Dogos and breeding Dogos and sending Dogos out, but if you own a Dogo and give that Dogo structure and are the and the leader for that Dogo and give them an outlet, they're going to live a happy life. And we can understand that not everybody's going to use or agree with the way that we're using the Dogo, but it really shows us what we have, what we're breeding. they cannot rely on anybody else, and it's really fun. It keeps us outside. It's a very, like Andrew said, it's a very family, pack-oriented, day in, day out. We're out there on the yard messing with them. I mean, it's just a really fun thing for us to have and to work on. It's a love. It's a passion.
You know, San Antonio is kind of growing out this way, and so are some of the other kind of New Braunfels and Austin area. And because of that, a lot of land's getting developed, which is pushing hogs more into our area. At the same time, a lot of the big kind of farms and ranches around here are kind of getting more split up, and that because of that, pastures are getting smaller, which, I mean, you know, like I said, this started out as something that we were going to kind of like try to prove to ourselves, but the longer we do this, the more it kind of makes sense, and it's becoming more of a useful thing to have these type of dogs, because places that are just simply too small for other styles of dogs to hunt, we can take Dogos in there and hunt it, and they're effective. I mean, we can hunt these Dogos on a big place and also on a small place. A lot of people have to, you know, they have to have a certain land requirement. You can't hunt long-range dogs on a small place, but you can hunt these type of dogs just about anywhere, you know?
And they're quiet. We can be in and out, no problem. You know, we can hunt some pretty small places. If there's a hog there, they're going to grab it, and we can get out of there pretty quick.
The majority of the places that we hunt are probably within about 10 miles of us. There's a lot of different creek bottoms, you know, nothing crazy. We do hunt a few river kind of type areas now and then, a little bit of cropland, but most of it's just really kind of grown-up brushy areas and that are grown up in cattle pastures. Some places as big as a couple thousand acres, and some as small as less than 100. But you know, different type of terrain in this area, kind of mixed up. This is kind of where that South Texas brushland kind of starts to roll into the hill country a little bit, and then at the same time, you know, there's a little bit of that kind of Gulf coastal plain, you know, in some spots. A lot of hay farmers in this area, so you get a pretty good different type of terrain in just a small area, and these dogs have kind of shown useful in a lot of different areas. You know, I feel good about hunting them, you know, in different spots and not have to worry about how they're going to do.
Right.
Yeah, and having so many places that we hunt be so close to us, and, you know, the landowners that you're hunting, because you're hunting so close, they all kind of tend to know each other and talk, and we've gotten places by word of mouth, you know, one farmer talking to another farmer that hogs are giving them a hard time, and they, you know, well, I know somebody that's kind of helping us out. And I mean, it's I would never say that, you know, we're helping out definitely as far as keeping hogs down. There's just so many of them. It's unreal. I mean, the hog population here now, even with so many people hunting and trapping, and, you know, now kind of night vision and thermal rifles have kind of gotten to be a big deal around here. But even with all that, there's still more hogs around here now than there were, you know, 20 years ago when I started out.
Right. Well, I really appreciate your guys' time. It was fun to hear, and I've been trying to get somebody with similar experiences that you guys are doing with the Dogos to talk to me, but people were kind of tight-lipped for whatever reason. So,
oh yeah, I mean, we try to be very transparent with what we're doing. I mean, we're not trying to do anything. There's no smoke and mirrors here. We kind of lay it out as truthfully as we can as far as what we show people. And Ashley's done an amazing job through social media with her Instagram. Kind of really, it's more of like a journal for us than anything. It's just us kind of.
We just really love the Dogo. We want to preserve, and we also want to show what they're capable of, that they're able to be a hunting dog. And it's just really fun for us. It's just really fun. We, like Andrew said, I just love spending time with them and just sharing that, you know, what the Dogo is, what they are capable of, you know, how powerful and how much fun they are. They're good dogs. They're good all-around dogs. And we're not trying to be number one breeder or anything like that. We're just trying to preserve what the Dogo is and show and make them good dogs, good all-around working, healthy dogs.
We're interested. Yeah, with seeing what we've seen, you know, especially from our first litter with Buzzsaw and then just kind of building upon that, we're very kind of, the longer we do this, the more interested we are into seeing where we can peak out with these dogs. Because, I mean, they really have been improving, and we just feel that we can get to a point where, I mean, these might be some kind of really handy working type dogs that can really kind of, a universal soldier type feel. So
it just goes back to practical. Places are getting smaller. If you need a dog that can find and catch a hog on its own, and then you can come to our yard.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It's not for everybody, but at the same time, we don't consider it a niche. I mean, what we're doing serves a purpose, and it's definitely a style that's been working for us.
Yeah, she's never been to Texas, so I wanted to show her where my mom lived and where I lived for a while, and so If
you're ever down here, we'd love to meet up with you. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to see your dogs and hang out and see what you South Texas boys and gals do.
Absolutely. Well, it was great talking to you.
Yeah.
We hope you have a good week, and
All
that'd
right.
be great.
Thank you, guys.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you very much. Bye.